Brian Keith took himself after admitting that he had something to do with the death of his daughter. Brian Keith was an American actor who had a long and successful career in movies and TV shows that spanned many years. He was known for his rough charm and deep voice. He came into the world of show business early on as the son of character actor Robert Keith and actress Helena Shipman. He was born on November 14, 1921, in Bayonne, New Jersey, as Robert Alba Keith. Being around the show business sparked his interest in acting at a young age. Brian learned the finer points of acting as a child in a creative home. This set the stage for what would become a successful career in Hollywood. Keith's early years were full of events that shaped who he is today. Brian's father, a successful stage and film actor, split up with his mother when he was a baby, but Keith the younger would spend time with both of them. Helena, Brian's mother, took him to New York City, where she worked as an actor. This is how Brian got to know what goes on behind the scenes at the theater. But he wasn't always an actor when he was young. Before he joined the Marine Corps during World War II, Keith went to East Rockaway High School on Long Island. He was a rear shooter in the Pacific Theater and was given an Air Medal for bravery in battle. The subject matter, the courage and camaraderie he felt in the war stayed with him throughout his life and shaped the strong, dependable, and often stoic figures he played on screen. Keith went back to normal life after the war and chose to become an actor full-time. In the 1940s, he made his Broadway start. But soon after, he moved on to movies and TV shows. The rough look of him and his natural ability to give subtle performances made him a versatile actor who could play many different parts. In the 1950s, Keith had steady work in westerns and action movies that let him show off his tough guy image. He became known as a reliable and skilled actor through early parts in movies like Arrowhead, 1953, The Violent Men, 1955, and The Mountain Road, 1960. But it was his part in The Parent Trap, a Disney gem, 1961, that made more people aware of Brian Keith. He was the nice and loving dad to Hayley Mills twins in the movie. His name was Mitch Evers. As a single dad trying to figure out his daughter's complicated life and his own love life, he showed that he could be both tough and soft, which is a trait of many of his most memorable parts. The movie did well at the box office and helped Keith move on to parts with families. Keith's popularity as an actor grew even more thanks to TV. If he had to pick one part, it might have been Bill Davis in the hit sitcom Family Affair, which ran from 1966 to 1971. Keith played a rich, well-educated bachelor who finds himself taking care of his brother's 3 orphaned children out of the blue. He played Uncle Bill with the right amount of kindness, patience, and sometimes anger as he got used to being a father figure. The show was a huge success, and Keith's performance made a whole generation of TV fans love him. As more proof of his skill and versatility as an actor, he was nominated for an Emmy for his work on Family Affair. Keith's success was marked by his ability to switch between styles and mediums with ease. After the success of Family Affair, he kept playing different kinds of parts on TV and in movies. He was in a number of movies in the 1970s. Among them was The Wind and the Lion, 1975, in which he played Theodore Roosevelt alongside Sean Connery and Candice Bergen. His performance as Roosevelt showed that he could easily play historical people who were bigger than life. He captured both the strength and charm of the month. Keith wasn't just good at making family-friendly music either. He was great at action, drama, and westerns, and many of the parts he played were about deeper psychological or emotional issues. His role in the Cold War comedy The Russians Are Coming, 1966, which poked fun at the ridiculousness of international tensions, was a great example of how he could be funny while still dealing with important issues. Every scene he was in had more weight because of him, which made the story even more powerful. He was great at finding the right balance between seriousness and humor, which made him a favorite of both directors and viewers. Keith stayed in the entertainment business through the 1980s and 1990s, often playing supporting parts in TV shows and made-for-TV movies. He played tough but complicated people in shows like Hardcastle and McCormick 1-9831986, in which he played former Judge Milton C. Hardcastle. He was a great actor because he could give people who seemed harsh depth and subtlety. Keith had a successful job, but his personal life was not always easy. He was married 3 times, first to Frances Helm, then to Judy Landon, and finally to Victoria Young. He had a number of children with all 3 of them. His family life had both happy and sad times. Keith was told in 1997 that he had lung cancer and asthma. His last cigarette was 10 years ago, but the damage had already been done. Keith had to go through painful chemo treatments after being diagnosed, which affected him mentally as well as physically. In April of that year, Keith also had to deal with the tragic death of his daughter. Daisy, his daughter, killed herself in her home in the Hollywood Hills. Brian Keith, star of Family Affairs, was so sad about the death of his daughter that he couldn't live without her. The death of his daughter was too much for Keith to handle. Neil killed himself at his Malibu home on June 24, just 2 months after Daisy did. At the time, he was 75 years old. It was said that the late star killed himself to end the pain he was feeling from his failing health, growing money problems, and the loss of his daughter. Finally, his last work could be seen on Spider-Man, the cartoon show, and Follow Your Heart. Johnny Whitaker took over after Brian Keith died. In the days before he died, the actress who played Jody on Family Affair shared sad memories of him. Whitaker said that he had talked to Keith just a few days before he died, and could tell that the actor was having a hard time mentally and physically. Keith was having trouble with his health because he was getting treatment. He had to go through a lot of hard treatment for lung cancer. Whitaker said that the star seemed totally worn out from chemotherapy and other problems he was already having. Whitaker, who had grown up on set with Keith as a father figure, was broken up when she found out. Keith became more than just Whitaker's co-worker. He also became her guide and friend while they were both on Family Affair. Keith played Bill Davis on the popular CBS show Family Affair in the 1960s. A wealthy and kind bachelor who all of a sudden had to be the father figure for his cousins and nephews, Buffy, Sissy, and Jody, who had lost their parents. Even though his character wasn't used to being a dad, he was able to handle it with the help of Sebastian Cabot's character, Mr. French, an English butler who was strict but kind. People really liked the show because it showed a good family life, and the actors got along well with each other. This link led to bonds that will last a lifetime, especially between Keith and his younger co-stars. Whitaker and his on-screen siblings, Anissa Jones and Kathy Garver, saw Keith as a second father figure. Keith helped them deal with the stresses of being a child star by giving them advice and support. Even after the show was over, they were still close. Whitaker's moving thoughts about Keith after the actor's death showed how much he loved him. After Keith's death, his co-workers and friends said wonderful things about him, calling him a giant in both ability and spirit. Kathy Garver, who played Sissy on Family Affair, talked about Keith's last days with a mix of sadness and respect. Keith had always been independent, so he decided to leave the hospital. He didn't want his last days to be controlled by his illness. Garver said Keith really wanted to live his life his way. She said that since Brian had always been so independent and willing to do things his own way, that could have meant beating the scary Reaper before it killed him. This moving sentence said it all. Brian Keith was determined, strong-willed, and set in his ways until the very end. The star always wanted to be in charge of his own life, even in his last moments. Garver had thoughts of Keith that went beyond the end of his life. She talked a lot about how he was not only a great character, but also a kind and loving person. She remembered how Keith was incredibly good at giving every part warmth and depth, but he was always humble about his achievements. Away from the camera, he was just as kind, always ready to help his co-stars or give them advice. Keith loved kids more than anything else, which was clear from the way he interacted with the younger actors on Family Affair. He was kind and respectful to them, and he often went out of his way to make them feel at ease on set. Garver said Keith was loving to everyone around him, especially kids, which showed that he was a father figure on and off screen. People who worked with him will always remember how nice he was, and their lives will be much worse without him. Brian Keith's untimely death in 1997 was a terrible blow to both his friends and his co-workers. After a long and painful fight with cancer, he killed himself. It was a sad reminder of the hidden struggles that even the most loved public figures can have. Unfortunately, Hollywood is full of actors who kill themselves before their time. The stresses of fame and personal problems are often not seen until it's too late. Keith's suicide brought attention to how important mental health is, and how important it is to help people who are living with long-term illnesses and emotional pain. In the years since he died, there has been more talk about mental health, especially in the entertainment business. More attention is now paid to putting health first and dealing with the mental health problems that come with the stress of fame. Even though Keith's death was sad, it made more people aware of how important it is to be kind and understanding when it comes to mental health, especially for public figures. Brian Keith said it was too late for him to understand how important it was to put mental health first. He felt bad about the death of his daughter for the rest of his life. Brian Keith works a lot and doesn't have much time for his daughter. This makes it more likely that his daughter will become unhappy and kill herself. In a painful chat a few days before he killed himself, he told her,